Alright, so it's time for Theoreticus Heresy episodes 9 and 10. Now, somebody pointed out to me something absolutely spectacular. These are the kinds of things that I was really looking for. The reason that Tzeentch would choose Jacante is because of his unpredictable and reckless nature, and Ferrus Manus would be a good choice for Nurgle because of Rust. I was kind of leaning towards that a little bit, but I was leaning more towards Ferrus being the Tzeentchian than anything else. But we're going to go ahead and watch this, and it's getting good. I'm not going to lie, it's getting really good, and I'm enjoying every bit of this. Here we go.
Upon the Blood Angel's flagship, the Red Tear, Sanguinius spent more and more time indulging in ever more increasingly hedonistic practices, be it in the indulging of fine food, pungent perfume, or other sensory stimuli. The practices began to spread amongst the rest of the Blood Angel's legion, slowly but immeasurably, a creeping corruption slowly changing their outlooks, beliefs, and urges. The angels started to crave more and more extreme sensations. The once beautiful corridors of the ship slowly degraded as the Legion serfs were forced to decorate the ship's interior with increasingly bright and garish colours and patterns, an affront to anyone with the gift of sight, let alone a sense of taste. The Legion serfs would notice that when Sanguinius was alone, he would often talk to himself before bursting into fits of sadistic laughter. The voices that emerged from his lips were not only his, but seemingly he had the voice of a seductive woman and the deep baritone of something else, something darker altogether. Those mortals who dared look upon the once beautiful face of the Lord of Angels would begin to cower in fear. His eyes, they were not his eyes anymore. What once shined icy blue, like the purest and most perfect sapphires ever carved by an expert jeweler, had become a deep violet that seemingly swirled with other shifting colours.
I can tell you guys, when the concept of Sanguinius being the one to turn to Fulgrim popped up, I wasn't too sure about it. I always thought that he'd be either, if the roles had been switched, he'd be the Khorne. He'd be the subject of Khorne. But hearing this and seeing this, I'm much more inclined to look the other way on this one.
Sanguinius sat upon his throne in his chamber and began to think to himself about what other greater pleasures could he and his sons sample. Food and wine were fine enough for mortal men, but for Astartes, they required more. Much, much more. He ordered his legion apothecaries to concoct stimulants and narcotics for the legionnaires.
And now we get the drugs!
Based upon the formulas that were used by the Xenos his legion had recently purged. But to do that, they would need pure human tissue. And with that, Sanguinius had every legion serf and remembrancer who was deemed as non-vital crew rounded up and slaughtered like livestock. Sanguinius would smile as he ordered the legion's tech marines to make modifications to their power armor, to pump and recycle this substance on a continuous basis, making every Astartes within the legion a slave to self-indulgence. Upon the world of Aelith, the primarchs of the Alpha Legion, Alpharius and his twin, Omegon, met with the alien Cabal. The Cabal explained to them that their brothers had rebelled and fallen under the sway of the Chaos Gods, and that two possible outcomes would emerge from the conflict. If the Emperor's forces won, then Chaos would be pushed back, but eventually return, stronger than before corrupting, enslaving, and wiping out all life in the galaxy after 10,000 years of human suffering. But if Rogue Dawn and his forces won, Chaos would be triumphant for a time, but eventually the human species will be forced into a rapid spiral of self-conflict and extinction so great that the Chaos Gods would never recover. So while damning humanity, all other races will be spared. Alpharius and Omegon's actions would affect the galaxy. The Xenos pleaded with the Primarchs to side with Rogue Dawn. Alpharius clenched his fists and turned to his twin before calmly stating that he was loyal to his father, his Emperor, and would not fall for a pathetic Xenos trick. He ordered his troops to open fire. The heavy rattle of gunfire and explosions of bolt rounds lasted but a few minutes, but long enough to ensure that all but the human perpetuals lay dead or dying upon the stony ground. They apprehended the perpetuals, and Alpharius gathered his troops and ordered them to join up with the loyalists for the Emperor.
Okay, so I really like what he did with Alpharius and Omegon. Basically, the story, it's so odd. I want to see what Theories does with this, because it's not altogether certain if the Alpha Legion is truly, absolutely 100% traitor. In the lore, the Alpha Legion stayed true to the Emperor's ideas, so their battle cry, which is for the Emperor, might not be an actual mockery. But in any case, they did meet with the Cabal. They were shown visions of the future, and they were told the exact same thing that Theories just basically said. And they chose to side with the vision of the Emperor, which was the defeating of Chaos. I do believe the Alpha Legion knew a lot more about the Emperor than anyone else. But in any case, pressing right along, episode 10, here we go.
As the Vae Victus travelled through the warp, Eonid Thiel ordered the ship's navigators to try and bring them back to the Sol system. They needed to inform the Emperor of the treachery of his sons at any cost. They travelled for what could have been days, weeks, maybe even years. Hard to tell given the instabilities of warp travel, thanks to the warp storms making the ethereal currents treacherous. Soon, they found that their ship's Geller field was failing, and were forced to re-emerge into real space, low on fuel, supplies, and morale. Eonid Thiel thought he and his men would die stranded in some uncharted wilderness of the deep void. A proximity alarm began to ring throughout the ship as a large vessel was fast approaching them. Their scanners were broken, damaged from the unstable journey through warp space, and the Loyalists were unaware if this new ship was friend or foe. An energy surge began to grow in size upon the bridge of the Vae Victus, and Eonid Thiel and his men hurriedly readied their weapons. Whoever this ship belonged to, they were teleporting aboard.
Mm-hmm.
A blinding
Mortarion,
flash of
let's
green
go.
light and arcing lightning heralded the arrival of 8 towering figures in heavy bone and green-coloured Tartarus pattern Terminator armour. The Terminators raised their weaponry in response to the Ultramarines, who held their bolters ready. A single figure emerged from amongst the Terminators, towering over all of them, carrying a massive scythe in his hand. The Death Lord, Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard. Mortarion asked who was in charge of this damaged vessel, and offered to escort them back to the nearest naval base to refuel and resupply. Theo stated that he needed to make way for Terra, for he had dire news of the utmost urgency for the Emperor. When Mortarion asked why he couldn't tell his Primarch of this dread news, Theo requested to speak to Mortarion in private upon his flagship, the Endurance. Mortarion laughed upon hearing the news Theo brought, assuming it was some kind of joke. When Theo assured him it was all true, Mortarion's mood soured. The Ultramarine was surely lying. Upon looking up the service record of Aeonid Theo, he noticed the sergeant's long and colourful history of insubordination. Mortarion demanded why he shouldn't simply execute him for treachery and desertion of his legion right there and then. A voice came from behind Mortarion stating simply, because the Ultramarine was telling the truth. As the Lord of the Death Guard turned around, he was surprised to see his brother, the Primarch Alpharius Omegon.
I love this.
Alpharius
Outstanding. I absolutely 100% love this.
confirmed to Mortarion that Aeonid Theo was telling the truth, and that they needed to inform their father, the Emperor of mankind. As Jagatai Khan's astral projection breached the psychic barrier, he found himself before his father, seeing his soul as a blinding golden light. He found himself unable to speak, but the Emperor saw his son's image and became angry. Jagatai Khan had inadvertently destroyed an important artifact, one important to the future of the Imperium and of Terra itself. As Jagatai Khan found his soul banished back to his body, awakening from his trance, the Emperor shook his head sadly. His son had defied his edict, and thus needed to be punished. He ordered his Praetorian, Horus Lupercal, and the Lunar Wolves to travel to Jagoras and arrest Jagatai Khan.
Yeah. Okay. I love the fact that the Horus and the Lunar Wolves have taken the place of the Space Wolves, in going and bringing the proxy for Magnus. Now, this is going to be far, far different for one reason and one reason alone. The concept of a loyalist Magnus. The concept of a Magnus that did not have to turn to chaos when the Space Wolves invaded their homeworld. Now, if Magnus reaches Terra before, if Magnus is able to get to Terra, the whole situation changes, because the Emperor can then lead the defense of Terra. Because Magnus can hold the warp gate closed in the Golden Throne. I'm really liking where he's going with this. I really am. I thought it was going to be Perturabo that Veal ran into on the way back to Terra. But Mortarion, I did not think that. But I'm glad. I'm really liking it. This is getting better. This is getting a lot better. So, I'm enjoying this. I'm going to keep on watching this. I will catch you guys on the next one. I'm putting his links down in the description below as well as my own. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys next time.